We don't usually get breaking news in the 6 a.m. hour of the show, but this is fascinating here in the last 15 minutes or so. We have this out of MSNBC. Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski sharing that they recently visited Mar-a-Lago for a meeting with Donald Trump. This happened on Friday, I assume after they got off the air. And let's take a listen to at least their side of the story on how this meeting went.
On Friday, we were given the opportunity to do just that. Joe and I went to Mar-a-Lago to meet personally with President-elect Trump. It was the first time we have seen him in 7 years.
Now, we talked about a lot of issues, including abortion, mass deportation, threats of political retribution against political opponents, and media outlets. We talked about that a good bit. And it's going to come as no surprise to anybody who watches this show, has watched it over the past year or over the past decade, that we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of issues, and we told him so.
What we did agree on was to restart communications. My father often spoke with world leaders with whom he and the United States profoundly disagreed. That's a task shared by reporters and commentators alike. We had not spoken to President Trump since March of 2020, other than a personal call Joe made to Trump on the morning after the attempt on his life in Butler, Pennsylvania. In this meeting, President Trump was cheerful, he was upbeat, he seemed interested in finding common ground with Democrats on some of the most divisive issues. And for those asking why we would go speak to the president-elect during such fraught times, especially between us, I guess I would ask back, why wouldn't we? 5 years of political warfare has deeply divided Washington and the country. We have been as clear as we know how in expressing our deep concerns about President Trump's actions and words in the coarsening of public debate. But for nearly 80 million Americans, election denialism, public trials, and January 6th were not as important as the issues that moved them to send Donald Trump back to the White House with their vote. Joe and I realize it's time to do something different, and that starts with not only talking about Donald Trump, but also talking with him.
How about that? Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski on MSNBC moments ago saying that they were down at Mar-a-Lago meeting with Donald Trump on Friday. I'll tell you right now, Trump is a more gracious individual than I think I would be in that spot. Now, he's getting the last laugh. These people spent months and years calling him a Nazi, a fascist, and everything else, and he's going back to the White House. He is getting the last laugh, so maybe as much as anything for Donald Trump, this is like therapy for him to get to welcome these people into his home and basically tell them to pound sand to their face in a very nice way, because that's just how Donald Trump does it in person. I'm sure he was charming. I'm sure he was engaging. But I'm also guessing for him, this was therapeutic. These people who spend every morning, hours a day, trashing him, ranting against him, insisting he could never get back into the position that he's going back to in January. He got to look him in the eye and say, I told you so. And that's got to feel pretty damn good. I'm not sure I would want to do it if I was him. I'm not sure I would have any interest in doing it. But clearly he did, John, and that's awfully admirable.
I don't know. I think he had him in to kiss the ring.
You think so? That's what it was all about.
It's virtue signaling on their part, and I'm wondering if this is the beginning of putting the sign out in the yard. Hey, let's get over this. We're better people than them.
Yeah, that could be it. Could be it. I don't know, but it's interesting, too, how you heard Mika say, I know some of you are wondering why we would go meet with this guy. Well, yeah, I mean, you called him a fascist. If you truly believed he was a fascist and a Nazi, why would you go meet with a fascist and a Nazi if you truly believed that? I wouldn't go meet with a Nazi, John.
Well, and then they say these things as if it's an epiphany.
Yeah, I know.
It's only for them.
Yeah.
And that message is for their followers, so we needn't take it to heart too much. Like, Trump knew it wasn't true. We all knew it wasn't true, so I don't know if It is therapy. It's very much enjoyable for him, I'm going to guess.
I'm guessing he loved every second of it. Yes.
How you doing?
Yeah, how you been? How's it been going there? And I like how Brzezinski said, my father used to meet with people. So her father was Jimmy Carter's national security advisor, which is really not something to brag about based on how awful foreign policy was during Jimmy Carter's term. But she acts like her going to meet with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago is like her father as Jimmy Carter's national security advisor going to meet with the worst leaders in the world.
Daytime.
I know. Are you kidding me? Relax. On the text line, Pete, I bet their bosses said do it or else because their ratings are tanking. Well, it is true. MSNBC's ratings are off 50% since Donald Trump got announced the winner. But I will say this. Some people are acting like, that's a sign of things to come. I'm not convinced it is. Fox saw a ratings dip after 2020. We saw a ratings dip after all the nonsense of 2020. People just check out. I remember some of you calling in after 2020 and being like, yeah, I took some time off. I wasn't as engaged in listening, and I just needed some time away. That's fine. That's just human nature. I don't think that MSNBC's bosses had any say over this because I don't think their bosses curry any favor with Donald Trump. Joe and Mika used to be friends with Trump. These people used to be. Go back and watch the 2015 interviews with Donald Trump on Morning Joe on YouTube. They were hugging each other, kissing each other. They were buddies because what they thought is that Donald Trump was a cartoon character who would bring them ratings and then would lose to their girl boss, Hillary Clinton. That was the plan. Use Trump for ratings, but then get what they wanted, which was Hillary Clinton in the White House. That obviously did not come to fruition, and because Trump blew up their plans, and you, the voters, blew up their plans, they've hated the guy ever since. But I did not think I'd see the day that they would show up to Mar-a-Lago and be able to get a meeting with Donald Trump. But it just says to me, too, that for all the talk about how Donald Trump is just on this warpath to get back at people who criticized him the last few years, maybe that's true to some degree with certain people, but meeting with Joe Scarborough at Mar-a-Lago is not exactly a sign of that, which makes it very interesting to me in terms of how he handles things once he gets into the White House. I don't think he's compromising on any of his principles. He's just trying to sway the naysayers in his direction because Donald Trump's one of these guys who thinks he can convince anybody to see things the way he does. And that's what this is in large part about.